So Mr. Bastin Robin is a chief data scientist with the Clever Insight, Bangalore, and he's also passionate algorithm developer and adjunct professor as a trainer too. And having that head of data science and artificial intelligence, and he has got like around more than 10 years and decades of experience, and he's responsible for the development of a data platform called Neuron Artificial Intelligence, taking care of open source data pre-processing engine called Cognito and Sparks libraries, and researching on handling unstructured data, raw data for industries such as FMCG, manufacturing, automotives, and etc. Actively speaking for the company and branding for them through various data conferences, and also mentoring the budding data scientists and as well as the teammates for their becoming expertise into their fields, and also working in the areas of recommendation systems for corporates, spam filtering, user modeling, fraud detection, social graph mining, emotional modeling, sentimental analysis, and graph search and churn prediction, and so on. Okay, so more that vocabulary is very new to me. I think we will get to know more in detail after this session, I guess. I'm very sure you people, the students of the ASBM Aditya School of Business Management as well, these vocabularies are very first time I think you are hearing like me, and you don't worry, it's an exposure session. You will get to know a lot through our key resource person, Mr. Bastin, and he has also worked with various other concerns like worked as a chief data scientist and a hash researcher, principal data scientist, as well as senior data analyst and so on in the area of Bangalore, and it's a hub, IT hub, right, Bangalore. So he worked. He's from Bangalore basically, and he'll be visiting our campus. We invited him when he's in Coimbatore to visit our campus and officially talk to our students and so on. And he is very close to our management, especially to our chairman and all our official management dignitaries. And we would like to welcome you, Mr. Bastin, for this occasion. And thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining today. And with the short notice, we know only for the last few weeks, and you are just, that wholeheartedly and with good wishes, you wanted to just share your thoughts with our students. That is really, really shows your, that humbleness towards the student and youth. And we wish, you all the very best for your career. And we will welcome once again. And we leave it to you now, Mr. Bastin, to take over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that brief introduction, and I'm feeling very my pleasure that I'm visiting and able to address you people all. So let me directly start with things. So I hope everyone can see my screen. If anyone can coordinate,
yes.
It would be great.
Yes,
fine. Good,
thank
you. So myself, I'm Bastin Robin, basically a data science practitioner. Since a couple of years, I've been into this domain, and I've been addressing different budding data scientists in the area of data science. So today's topic is pretty much clearly defined. That is the art of data-driven decision making. So when I'm telling what is this data-driven decision making, one very simple cliche which I can take is, generally, that we are a building economy and we are moving from the previous way of thumb rule based decision making to more a data centric decision makers. Very simple example is like you take a farmer, okay, around 10 to 20 years before, a farmer very well know the dictated climate, so he can decide which crop he can put during which type of seasons. Definitely he will get his yield back. But in the modern days, the common problem most of farmers are facing is that is they are not able to predict what is the climatic factor it's happening, and even though if they are able to predict, they don't know which crop to put to get the high yield. That's where we are moving from a regular thumb rule based decision making to a data driven decision making. So today's theme is completely on the art of data driven decision making. As a management students, it's one of the most important thing which you people need to know in order to make yourself unique in the market. So why I say this? Generally, if you complete an MBA degree and you come, I've been sitting and I've been interviewing different levels of candidates, right from the master's till PhD levels in the area of data science. So there is something which data science has to do more with management students than technology students. You people may be recently seeing that a lot of data science what to say buzzwords coming around, and what they say is data scientist job is the sexiest job of 21st century. This is according to Harvard Business Review. Why they say is, it's not because this field was not existed. This field was already existing long ago, but right now it is in a new shape. Initially it was called statistics, and right now data science, they have renamed it. That is exactly the old wine in the new bottle. So why this big buzz is happening? What is the reason? Simple reason is, right now we are using a mobile device which is 100 times faster than your laptops. Now you can do mobile computing from any part of the world. The reason is the hardware price have literally crashed down. Even you can get terabytes of hard disk with a very small amount of money. But during that time, before data science and all this evolved, take it like 20 years before, we call a subject called statistics. That subject was used to do probabilities and predictions and different levels of analysis on the data, but it was limited. The data was in the form of paper and pen. Ultimately, the limitations came. When the hardware price crashed down, what happened is there become a marriage between statistics and computer science. So you can process large amount of data, apply the same statistical principle onto it. That's how data science was born. And even now, the highest paid salary in the entire world is for a data scientist. It is in crores. Now, the entire theme of this talk is data will talk to you if you're willing to listen. This is one of my favorite talk, which I always favorite quote, which I always use it in most of my presentations or most of my sessions, because data will talk to you if you are willing to listen. See, since decades we are having data. Go to a bank. There is data since 20, 30, 40 years. Data is there, but it is still kept in silos, that is in archives. No one has yet used all this data. But in the modern day scenario, we can use that data to predict what can happen tomorrow or what can happen today. If you are able to understand that business value by predicting what can happen tomorrow, that is equivalent to a magician power, right? Like if you are knowing that which stock will go up, which stock will go down, if I am knowing it in a proactive way, I can take a decision from facing a loss, or I can take a decision to get a high gain. So that's why I say, if you're willing to listen, data will talk to you. That is, I will show you how it works. In the modern day scenario, these are the different verticals you can see, like healthcare, horizontal application, commerce, and ad management, business, legal. So across different verticals, how the penetration of AI is. AI is nothing but artificial intelligence, and I'll come back to you a little more deeper into it. So this is the in every quarterly point of time, how much intense these companies are using data science. You can see in different sectors. Now, let's take it to a different level. Before 1950, during that time, anything a computer is able to do in automatic way was called as artificial intelligence. From 1915 till 1980, any automation was called as artificial intelligence. That is the early phase of AI. Now, after 1980 till 2010, there is a sub branch which has been formed called machine learning. That is nothing but a machine's ability to take a decision based out on experience, what it has done. For example, take a kid. A kid will only do things which it has experienced. So that's where the AI got its subset branch called machine learning. Now, since 2010 till now again machine learning got a subset that is called deep learning. What does it mean is, initially we were able to predict what will happen, but in deep learning phase, I think most of people will be having a Facebook account. If you just go and upload a picture, within 5 minutes or even a fraction of seconds, you can see automatically the tags will be shown on the pictures of, if it is a group picture, lot of tags will be shown. This person is this person, and this is the account which this person represents. I mean, like, you can tag a friend automatically. That is where deep learning plays a role. That is like a very, very, very sophisticated neural network algorithms. Don't need to get into all this thing. Just have a rough idea about what it is. So first and foremost thing, learn to love the data, because the real hero is data. Don't see that like you are not a technocrat or you're not from a strong programming background or anything else, because data science is for everyone, especially for management people. And without management, data science will become obsolete. Now let's me take a very simple example here. So data, I'm talking a lot more things about data since the beginning of the session. This is a very simple data set you can see of a company which is having 4 different branches. One is in Boston, one is in Chicago, one is in Detroit, and one is in New York. During 2010, this is 1 year report. Okay. Now, if I'm asking you whether all 4 branches are performing similar way, when you go down to see the average price of Boston, 9.0, average price of Chicago, it's 9.0, average price of Detroit, it is 9.0, and average price of New York, 9.0. Same way, the sales is also 7.50, 7.50, 7.50. Variance is also same across. Now, if I ask this question, it is pretty easy for you to make a conclusion that yes, all 4 branches are performing equally. And if I ask you, do you agree with it? Definitely, most of the time we'll make a simple mistake of agreeing it, because average and variance across all branches are same. But if you look it into a little different view like this, just plot the same data into a scatter plot, you can see that Boston market is slowly growing. Chicago is dipping exactly after 10. Detroit is growing with one outlier out there, and New York market is fluctuating. So in the previous slide, if you have taken a decision just seeing the average and variance of all the data set is same, you had make a blunder mistake. So I'm telling, in a very small set of data itself, you can make such a big blunder mistake. What if the data is pretty much bigger? Bigger in the sense, I'll show you what is actually a big size of data. Now, data comes in different formats. The regular format which we are very much aware is the tabular structured data. That is what you used it in your spreadsheets. Second level of data which comes in the form of PDFs, document files, and etc. Third format is audio files, MP3, MP4, WAV, etc. Then comes the video, that is MP4 and MPEG, all these things. Whatever it is if you look it into a bird's eye point of view, it is only a data which a computer can understand in the form of binaries, zeros and ones, right? So when data we get it, from data we draw information. What is information? The processed form of data is called information. From information, we build knowledge. From knowledge, the wisdom is built. This is entirely the pipeline of data science in a philosophical way. Now, all this data, let it be in any format, end of the day it has to come to this format, that is zeros and ones. Once it is coming into this shape only, anything will make sense to us. So that is the area where data science plays a major role. Let's take a very simple example now. Now I showed about different types of data and how data is being understood by a computer by means of binaries. Now let me take you a very simple example. The entire data science has a very unique pillars. If you're understanding those phases very clearly, I can make sure that next time if someone is asking you what is data science, you can pretty much clearly explain them what is data science. So leave all the confusions. Let me take you to a metaphor here, which I regularly use it. If you're going to a doctor, okay, you have some kind of disease and you're just going to a doctor, and first thing what happens is you will tell what are your symptoms. You will say I'm having headache, fever, back pain, or anything else like that. You will be telling the different symptoms. So the doctor keeps on asking different questions. What are your symptoms? What was your BP level last month? Did you come for a checkup last month? Or did you took any lab test in the last week? Like that, she collects all the information from you, which has happened already. What has happened? That phase, she is collecting information about your past. So that phase, we call it as descriptive phase. That is whatever is already known. Now, after collecting all the past information, the doctor will say, okay, let's do one thing. Go and complete. She will write a number of tests to complete and come in the same day. So you'll take that list and go to the nearest lab, and you finish all the blood tests and other diagnostic, whatever it is there. In real time, they will take your blood and check things, and they'll generate a report and give it to you. So that report, you will take it to the doctor in the same day. That phase, you're handling data which is present. They are knowing what is happening to you in real time. That phase is called diagnostic phase. Now, after getting this past and present, the doctor will predict what can happen to you. That is nothing but, she says, okay, last week it was like this, today it is like that. There is a slight chance that tomorrow your BP have a trend of growing upward, or it is having a trend of going downward. Now, doctor can predict your future based out on only two aspects, that is this past and present, that is descriptive phase, diagnostic phase, in order to know what will happen to you tomorrow. Now, after knowing these three things, the doctor will do one thing very important, that is, she takes her prescription pad and writes a medicine for you morning and evening, or morning or afternoon, and she'll say, you just take only these medicines, ultimately your problem will be sorted. So here, you wait a second, you have to think about one thing. Doctor has predicted what can happen to you tomorrow, and what will be your BP level, how much it can go, what will be the upward trend. She has predicted that. She never write that value inside the prescription. She directly writes an action. That is, rather than giving you what will happen, what will be the trend, or what will be the level of BP for you tomorrow, she directly writes a medicine. This is the phase which is converting all your previous analysis into an action. And in that action, doctor writes clearly, take this medicine. So this phase is called prescriptive phase. This phase requires domain knowledge. Okay, you can be a technocrat. A technocrat will play a major role in these three phases. But when it comes to the last phase, only a doctor can prescribe a medicine based out on the test which has been conducted. Same example you can take across different domains. Let it be banking, let it be software company, whether it can be any industry. The same level of analysis is always followed. These four pillars together with a flow is called data science. Nothing but you're understanding the root cause, why it happened, what will happen, and what action I need to take. This thing, if you understand, everyone is basically a data analyst. Let me take you to a next one. Now, we are going to focus mainly on one thing. This is nothing but past analysis. Means if you are having a data set, I'm giving you a simple data set which is having name of a person, account number, what is his account balance, gender, like that and all. If I'm giving these column, you will be conducting a descriptive phase where you will find what is the mean value, what is the median value, what is the maximum value, what is the minimum age or maximum age, what is an average age in this given data set. Like that, you're understanding some level of descriptive. Same happens in diagnostic also. And prescriptive is highly dependent on all these three phases. So data science pretty much clearly focus on predicting the future. How can I use the data to predict what will happen? So that is the area what we are going to look into deeply now. So to predict what will happen to you tomorrow, let me take you to a very small example. That is, Tom wants to play. Tom is a small boy. Consider like he's a very small boy who really want to go and play. And he's a newborn. You can see he's not having more knowledge or anything else. Whatever his parents are teaching, that is knowledge. So when Tom says, I want to go and play, immediately Mama responds. Like Mama says, Tom, outside it is rainy. See, it is very cold and wind is also very high. So don't go to play. Tom's target here is to go and play. But in order to go and play, he needs to cross all these barriers. That is, these are the dependent features where he needs to see. See, climate is cold, wind is high, and it is a rainy day. Fine. So before Mama is taking a decision to allow him to go and play or not, Mama takes into consideration these factors. If these factors are changing, the target also will change, whether to allow him to play or not. Let's see in action how Tom understands the basics. This is how human intelligence works. Now, first, Mama was telling about rainy. So the rainy means it is something belong to climate. Climate means he needs to know what are the different types of climate. In climate, there are 4 types of climate. So that's sunny, rainy, cloudy, and snowy. Okay, he got a knowledge about climate now. What is a rainy day? What is a sunny day? What is a snowy day? What is a cloudy day? After that, wind. Mama was also telling about wind is very high. So he needs to know about what is wind, how wind has been calculated, and all these things he need to know. So wind, if this flag is flying high, wind is high. If flag is going medium, it is wind is medium. If it is not flying, then it is no wind is there. Third factor is time. Mom will not allow him to go to play after 6 o'clock. So he needs to know that clock also. What is time represented in that column? Fourth thing is temperature. Mama also was telling that temperature is very cold, so don't go to play. So in modern day homes, you can see most of the wall clocks have this temperature sensor. So Tom has to consider what is the temperature at which I can go and play, when which temperature mom will not allow me to go and play. After learning these 4 factors thoroughly, only he can take a decision whether to go to play or not, right? Tom wants to go and play, but he has to pass these barriers. So whatever factors he is using in order to take a decision to go to play or not, these are called features. In modern day machine learning and all this data science phase, we call the features which are responsible for taking a decisions are called features, and the final action whatever he is going to do is called target. I hope now you understood it. Consider all these factors are one column. Wind is one column, climate is one column, time is one column, temperature is one column, and target is also one column. But we need to separate them into 2 things, that is weather, features, and targets. Now let's see how Tom learns to take decisions. Let's take 6 columns. Day 1 comes. Tom is asking Mama, shall I go and play? So what happens is, day 1, Mama is seeing the climate is sunny. She's seeing the temperature, it is 40. Wind is 2.5 and it is morning. So she gives a permission, yes, go and play. This is the target. These are the features. Okay. Now second day comes. It is a rain. Tom is asking Mama, shall I go and play? It is a rainy day. Temperature is 10. Wind is 8.3 and time is 8 p.m. Don't go to play. Third day comes. Tom is asking Mama, shall I go and play? Sunny day. Its temperature okay. Wind is okay. Morning day. Okay, go and play. Fourth day, it's a spring. 25 the temperature. Wind is also okay. Morning time, go and play. Fifth day, rainy day. But temperature, everything seems to be normal. And it is 8 a.m. Okay, go and play. Sixth day, it's a rainy day. Temperature is very cold. Wind is also high. And it is evening time. No, don't go to play. Seventh day comes. No, don't go to play. Now, eighth day, Tom comes home very anxious, very much excited to go to play. But he finds Mama is not there in the home. Mom has gone to some function or somewhere else. She's not in home. Now, Tom needs to control his excitement and take an intelligent decision whether to go to play or not. So as Mama is there, here Mama was there. All these days, Mom was there to give this yes or no decision. But here, Mom is not there. So he has to take a decision where it should not create any problem for him. If he's taking a wrong decision, definitely Mama is going to scold him once she's coming back. So Tom needs to take an intelligent decision. So first, Tom sees what is the climate? It is a rainy day. What is the temperature? It is 11, and the wind is 8. It's evening. Now he will compare with all the previous examples. That day it was a rainy day. Temperature was this range only. Wind also was this range. Time was evening. So definitely Mom will not allow me to play. So now you understood how Tom takes a decision. Ultimately, the majority vote will go for no only. No one will say yes, because all the features what is responsible to take a decision are against him. So he will take no, I'll not go to play. So this is called prediction. You are predicting based out on past experiences one value. So here this is a classification problem because there are only 2 classes, yes or no, true or false, 0 or 1, on or off. This is a binary variable, right? So this is a classification problem. So let's see little more deeper about what each variable represents. You can see day which represents a unique number. So these are called identifier columns. That means any column which is having unique values are identifiers, like your PAN number, PAN ID, Aadhaar card number. All these things are uniquely identified. Next, climate is a categorical variable because there are only four categories of climates: one rainy, sunny, snowy, and cloudy. Temperature is a continuous variable because it can be 0 or 0.1 or it can be 100.7. Anything it can be in point values. So these wind also will come in point values. So they are called continuous variables. Time is a categorical variable even though it is having a number. We again there is one more level, we say it's a discrete variable. But to be frank, of 24 hours is the measurement. Anything which comes will be within that 24 hours only. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., like that. So that is also is a categorical variable only. And finally, the target also is a categorical variable. Now, I think whenever you get a data set, you will be able to understand what is a categorical variable and what is a continuous variable, and what are identifiers and what are discrete variables. Discrete variable means take age. Age, a maximum age a person can have will be between what is a 1 to 100. So that is a discrete variable. It cannot go beyond that. Even though it is a number, it is still a discrete variable. Discrete means it's something similar like a categorical variable. You should not compare it with the continuous variable. Continuous variable is price, discount, all these things are continuous variables. Now, these are some of the examples of identifiers and discrete variables and categorical variable, continuous variable. You can see here age is discrete variable, but age group is not a discrete variable. Age means it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, anything. Age group means 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, 25 to 40. Like this groups come. That is categorical variable. And same way, continuous means height, weight, temperature, humidity, cost, time, length. All these things are continuous variables. Now, why you need to know all these things is, in entire data science, we are going to specifically focus on these two type of variable. Either you are going to predict a category or you're going to predict a continuous variable. Let's see how it works. If you are predicting a categorical variable, that kind of class problems are called classification problems. You have to predict a class. If you are going to predict a continuous variable, these are called regression problem. That means you're predicting a number. So let's take it. Now, there are something called accuracy measures. Whenever you predict anything else, ultimately, consider I'm a critic. I'll say like, how can you say that your prediction is true? How can I believe you? Because you don't know what will happen tomorrow. I also don't know what will happen tomorrow. And you are telling what is going to happen. So how can I believe on you whether you are telling the correct thing or not? So to analyze these things by statistical point of view, there are a couple of cost functions and measuring accuracies are there. That is, if it is a classification problem, you can use some of the factors like sensitivity, recall, specificity, precision, F1 score, ROC, confusion matrix. These are some of the metrics to measure whether your predictions are correct or wrong. And if it is a continuous variable, if you're predicting a continuous value, you are checking the accuracy using squared error, mean squared error, root mean squared error, absolute error, and mean absolute error. Like these factors are there. So these are the main in the entire data science or deep learning, your image processing or artificial, everything can be cooked up into these two categories. Either you are going to predict a category or you're going to predict a number. If it is a categorical variable, exactly how it happens is, this is exactly a decision tree which work more similar like how human brain works. So you are going to predict the weather outlook. So if it, first thing is, if it is a sunny day, they go to the column called climate, check what is the climate. It's just a sunny. Then check to the humidity. If it is no high, don't go to play. If it is normal, yes, go to play. If it is a cloudy day, okay, go and play. If it is a rainy day, check what is the wind. If wind is weaker, go and play. If wind is stronger, don't go to play. This is how basically a classification model works. It's having a lot more other algorithms to do this, but this is in enlarged, this is a basic idea. Same way, if it is a regression problem, if you're going to predict a number, let me bring you a good example here. I'll use MS Excel itself. Okay. I hope everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see.
Perfect. So consider like I'm just having square feet, then I'm having number of rooms, then price. So consider I'm going to a new area. Okay, I'm going to a place where I want to buy a property. Okay, in that area, there is one property which is bit isolated, and I know what is the square feet value and what is square feet and how many rooms are there. I want to predict the price. So consider luckily that area administration group is having a list of all the houses, its square feet, number of rooms, and price. Now, based out on that example, can I predict that particular house value? So consider like there is a house which is having 4,000 square feet and which is having 4 rooms, and the price is around $50,000. Okay. Likewise, I'm just copying it, putting examples. Okay. Let me change between random. Sorry. I should not put random. I'll put something 5,000. 5,000. 100,000. 1,500. 2,500 square feet. 4,300 square feet. 6,000 square feet. 6,000 square feet. 10,000 square feet. 88,000 square feet. And 500 square feet. 1,000 square feet. This much is enough. I don't want to take too much. I'll keep it simple. Number of rooms can be, let room 5, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 7, 6, 6, 2, 3. This price can be 50,000, 60,000, and 2,000, $20,000, or $25,000, and 5,000, 5,000, 5,100, 7,000, 20,000, and can be 100,000, and this also can be 140,000. This can be 4,000. This can be 43,000. So we have a data like this. Okay. Now I want to see, is there somewhere I can correlate both of them? So first thing is I'll select both of this, and I'll go to insert, and I will just plot a very simple scatter plot. Okay. Now I can see this is what a scatter plot looks like. Fine. So what I need to do is I want to predict the house value. Now what happens is you can see most of our data lies into little different. So let me little change it into 80,000. Sorry, 2,000. And let's keep a little bit in the 60,000 as 55. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Now I have all the house. This is x-axis is the square feet, and this is the price. Now I want to predict a new house. So there is another house which is having 5,800 square feet, which is having 3 rooms. I want to predict the price of that particular house, but the house owner is not there. I have only these values, but these things I'm having it: square feet, number of rooms, and price of other houses. Now what I do is I need to draw a regression line here. What is a regression line is like, let me go here and let me take one line. So wherever this population is there, I have to I have to include this also. I have to draw one line which is exactly splitting them equally. So I can see here, I will check it and see it will not split equally. I will come here, I'll come here. Okay, now here I will draw one line exactly which should split like this. Okay, this line I'm drawing where both this entire population of this points should be exactly split it into two halves. Now, this is called regression line. Okay. Now, what we want is after drawing this line, now consider you are having this new property which is having 5,800 square feet. Now let's see where 5,800 will come. Exactly here it will come. So again I'm going to draw one more line. Okay, I'm going to insert a new line exactly in this point. Is it 5,800 will come this point, right? So I will draw one line exactly like this in a vertical line. Now what happens here is I have pointed this new observation wherever this is touching this line, right? Let me zoom it a bit. This line, wherever it is touching this regression line, from there I'm going to draw one more line. That is, let me go and insert. Here is the point, right? I'm drawing one line. Like exactly, it should be like this. Even I can little move it a bit also. I can little move. Now, the predicted price of 5,800 is exactly coming at us $50,000. This is the predicted price. Now the same model I can move. If any new house comes which is around 20,000, I'll move this to here. Wherever it is touching, there I'm going to increase. So you can see the predicted price of this 20,000 square feet house is $70,000. Likewise, I keep on moving to some more distance. Consider like it is like $28,000. Now, what happens here is I'm finding the exact sweet spot here. So this is how basically a regression works. So let me come back to the model here. Now, this is a regression problem. This is how you predict a number. You can use to predict how many death case will be there, how many recovery will be there during COVID scenario using regression itself. So it's very interesting area. Now, let's take how computers learn this. Let's take examples of all the thing whatever our Tom has learned. This is the examples which Tom has learned till now. Now you can see that we are having close to 17 records are there. Now basically what happens is exactly like how you conduct an exam. You see what is the target variable, this target variable, right? Total number of yes is 8 and total number of no is 9. So we are having a very balanced data set. That means the person, the number of days he is going to play and number of days he is not allowed to play, both are equal. So whenever I build a model, it will not show any bias towards the majority class. If I'm seeing the total number of yes is more than 12 and remaining only is no, whenever I build any model, most of the time my model will predict yes only, because it's not equal. But here it is balanced. So in this condition, what we do is we take the 70% of the data and 30% of data, we'll split it. So we will use that 70% of data and train a model in such a way that these things are being taught. That is, if it is sunny day, temperatures like this, allow him to play. This is one question, this is its answer. Another question, this is the answer. This is the question. Like that, the 70 examples I will be teaching a model. A model will learn it. After that, what I will do, I will take the rest of this 30% and I will hide this answer and ask these questions to that model and see what answer that model is giving. And I will cross compare with this. Let's see how it works. You can see here, when I'm just taking this data, 70% of this data, I am teaching a model. A model is nothing but it's a simple function like how you do a subtraction or multiplication, etc. Just hold on a minute. Yeah. So you can see 70% of this data is training data. We'll teach them. Next, we'll take the rest of the 30%. We will hide the answer and we'll only pass that question to that model. That model will give you an output like this, predicted output for each of the rows. Now we have the actual. We will compare it with NC. See, actual first one is matching perfectly. Second one also is matching. Third is matching. Only fourth one is not matching. Rest everything. So my model's accuracy is 95%. It's accurately predicting it. This is how a model works. Now, machine learning and deep learning are the core of data science. Machine learning, you have to exclusively tell these are the features, like what we see, weather, climate, etc. All these things are features. We have to exclusively tell the model these are the feature and these are the targets. And that will do the classification and tell you whether it is a car or not a car, or whether it is a disease or it's not a disease. But in deep learning, what happens is if you pass an image, ultimately it does a lot of feature engineering, feature classification. It will find you and get you the answer. And deep learning models are highly accurate models, but they are pretty much sophisticated models. Now, let's see a very simple data set. Here, you can see a data set which is pretty much huge. This is nothing but the last 100 years of weather data from Indian Meteorological Department of, we have got this data from them and we worked on a model. Such kind of data, we call it as curse of dimensionality. That means it's pretty much huge where you cannot find any patterns from that. Now, again, I'm re-emphasizing the word, learn to love the data and importance of knowing the data. Let's go to a little more deeper level. Let me go to, okay. So let's take one pretty simple example where I'll start from here. Yeah. See, let's meet Richard. Richard is a CEO of a SimplyBuy company. SimplyBuy is a kind of company which is like Amazon. Consider it's a virtual company. So in order to build a reliable business, he has few requirements to the data science team to make better decisions. So let's see. CEO, he's a CEO and he has a couple of important things to be considered during a decision making. So he asks everyday data science team that some of his problem. Number one, can I know which product sells together? Can anyone help our HR team to shortlist the resumes faster and save time? Third one is, what are the customer feedbacks about our products? These three questions he's asking to the team, which is consisting of a lot of data analysts and data scientists. Now let's see how to convert this business problem into a data problem. That means from where the data will come. For understanding which product can sell together, data can be retrieved from our SimplyBuy inventory. Can anyone help our HR team to shortlist resume faster? Yes. From candidate applications can be retrieved from job portals database. What are customer feedbacks? Yes, we can mine it from our social media. So these three things we have found from where data will come. So let's enter into the first question. That is, can I find similar product recommendation? How to find product recommendation? Now, let's take a list of products and users. User one is considered like it's one user, second user, third user. User one bought an apple. User two bought an orange. Like that, we have frequency of shopping, a person who is coming and buying things and what product they buy. See, user 6 bought apple and grapes. User like that, we have different levels of detail here, there. Now let's transpose this data into a format like this. That is nothing but put all the items here as unique columns and all users like this. And James bought apple. So yes, James didn't buy orange, 0. James bought pineapple. Like that, ones and zeros we come. Now when you apply a simple conditional formatting exactly in Excel, you get a simple pattern. What does this pattern represents? James, okay, like when you see the recommendation, James and Rick have similar choice. You can see James and Rick have similar choice. They both bought apple, they both bought pineapple. The only thing Rick and James difference is Rick has bought milk, but James didn't. So I can recommend James that milk is the next thing in your shopping list. Next, Gracie and Tommy has similar choice. She may like grapes as well. So you can see Gracie here and Tommy, they both don't like apple. They don't like orange. They both like Grace like grapes, but Grace doesn't like grapes. Tom is liking it. So I can recommend this to it. So in this way, basically using the frequency of shopping, we can easily recommend them what is the next product which they may buy. So rather than showing all the product, if I'm recommending something similar, it is easy for the person to do the shopping. So the first problem I sorted using a very simple example using Excel itself. Let's take the next problem which Richard say, that is, can anyone do resume scoring? Now, a company like Amazon per day receive close to millions of resumes. So I'm having how much ever bigger it is, I'm only having a small set of HR team. I should be able to use my HR team effectively, and I should be very, very, very neutral to every resume. I should not just throw just because I got some. I have to filter the right resume from the given list. How to do that? So what we do is like take the resume, and it is in the form of PDFs, and we scrape all the textual content from that PDF and remove all the stop words like the, is, and the, like this kind of stop words will remove it and only focus on the keywords. Now I am the CEO of a company, or I'm considered like I'm the department head. I want a person who is really good in Python programming, and who is good in MS Excel, and who is good in C. This is my requirement. Now I got millions of resume on. So what I will do is I will give a scorecard to them. If someone is having a C Python programming, give him 5 points. If someone is having C plus C plus plus, give 5 points. If someone is generally programming, 2 points. Like that I will give a scorecard. Now I will do a frequency count on the data. That means from the data, after removing the stop words, I have only the keywords. I will count how many times the keyword repeats. So if it is 10 time repeating, 10 into that score, whatever. So like that, for every keyword, what is more important for me, only for that, score that. So according to me, this resume score 23.5 is the score. Now in a loop, I can do for all the resumes which is in more than 1 billion resumes. Within 10 minutes, I can get a scorecard data like this. Now what happened, Mike, the whichever the score is coming, that I can sort it, and I can pick the candidate who is scoring high. Now, not only that, nowadays what we do is we source information from other social medias, like how is their personality? Are they a social buff, or politically interested, or sports interested, or they are extrovert? Like this data, we can grab it from the social media. That's the reason most of companies these days ask for your social media information also, to pull out these things in an automatic way. Now I can sort the column of my choice and pick the top 10 resumes, and I can directly what to say, conduct an interview with them rather than going through that billions of piles of resume. This is where data science solves the problem. Third one, different types of customers. See, as Simplibuy is a virtual Amazon kind of company, I want to see who are high price, high paying customers, and price conscious customers, quality conscious customers. Like the segments I need to identify. How to identify that? We use something called a cluster analysis. That is like, we every time whenever someone's do a shopping on the website, we take different levels of inputs. This row one is user one, how much his importance for price, 9, how much his brand preferences, 2, frequency of shopping, 7 out of 10, loyalty 1, usage level 10 out of 20, ad awareness, yes, sales promo response, 5 out of 10. So like this I calculate for everyone, and I plot a simple cluster. So in a clustering problem, it will exactly cluster the customer into 4 different types, where I can find there are some similarity among each cluster. This may be a price conscious segment, this may be a quality conscious, this may be a brand conscious, this may be a premium customer. So once I understand the segments, I can only display the products which is relevant to them, so they will not waste any time in just going through the entire inventory in the website. So here I'm solving a problem using customer behavior. We can identify what is they want, rather than we go and give something what they don't want. Third, next thing is, can I understand sentiment across the place? So for example, what is it means? That means, like, for example, these days the modern phones are being sold through using the social medias, or like e-commerce like Amazon and all, etc. So if I want to identify Apple iPhone is the new launch, how people are reacting to it. So what I will do is, after the launch, immediately I'll scrape all the content from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, which is matching that hashtag, have iPhone. Then do a sentiment scoring, whether it is a positive sentiment or negative or neutral, any three. Then plot it on a choropleth map. You can see the sentiment across geographies. All other places are giving a very neutral feedbacks, but only two places it's having a negative. Now I very well know that which are the two places I need to call them and ask why your stores are performing negatively, why people are posting negative feedbacks about it. I can take decisions pretty much faster. This is why data science really helps. Now, enough of all these things. Let's see some couple of use cases which we have worked out, which can really help you to understand things better. The data which I shown you in the previous, where the curse of dimensionality comes, it is 1902 till 2002, every district wise data of weather temperature data we have got it. So we were working with the meteorological department of India, and we found that we can summarize the entire data into a very simple model. Let me take you to that model. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Now, if I click the start button, you can see throughout that 100 years of data, it's keep on running here. You can see here the day, which day it is running and how it is running. You can see the orange it is, that means the temperature is pretty much higher, and it is very, very, hot climate. Now, one very interesting thing which you can find in this data is throughout all these years, the Western Ghats is cold and the northern part of India is also cold in these regions. Okay. Now, one very interesting thing you can see is here it is having an opposite climate. When others are hot, this place is cold. When others are cold, that is hot. Likewise, only two places you can see, one is here and one is here. So we were looking into it, what is that thing which is having a contrast climate? So this answer we got it from, this was a very big question, like we all were looking into. So I got an answer when I was traveling from Bangalore to Pune. So when I landed in Pune airport, it was very, very much rainy. I was traveling to a hill station. There is a university, Christ University in Pune. So I was in Pune airport. It was heavy rain. So when I'm reaching to that hill station called Lavasa, it was very hot. Okay. Next day when I'm returning back, that day it was very much rainy on Lavasa, and there was no sign of rain in Pune. Then we understood one thing. Lavasa is basically a valley. Every valleys always have an opposite climate. When other surroundings are cold, they will be hot. When others are hot, that valleys will be hot. So when you see both these points, this is Bilaspur in Chhattisgarh, and this is Shimoga in Karnataka. So these two places are valleys. You can see a data which is represented in a very little different art form can give you much information about it. Fine. Now, after implementation of GST, the rate of HIV/AIDS transmission reduced. So this may be, it's not a gimmick, and it is pretty much having something to tell. I think most of people could have heard that like HIV/AIDS is pretty much, the transmission is slowly reducing it. That was one factor which we found is the GST really played some role in reducing the rate of transmission. How does it happen? I don't know how many of them have seen this location. This is none other than the place, like if you go from Coimbatore to Palakkad or to any place in Kerala, you have to cross a checkpost called Valayar, right? Likewise, every state borders have checkpost. Whenever you have any goods coming, you have to go to this checkpost. So there is something called octroi. This entire aspect we call octroi. So what happens is, when we see the amount HIV/AIDS transmission, the players in that are sex workers. They are highly the one who spreads it in a rapid way. Second highest profession of people who spreads HIV/AIDS virus is the truck drivers. Let me explain you how. Whenever the truck starts from Kolkata till here, he has to cross multiple state border checkposts. Every state border checkpost will be exactly like this only, which will be having crowded. So normally when they come, they have to stay there for more than half a day, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. The lorry trucks will be standing in this position, and these are the localities where the sex workers are highly active. Now, a truck driver can get infected through this because of their staying is longer there. So he carries the infection from one place to another place, and it will reach till their own home itself. Through this way, most of the truck drivers were getting affected because of having infected from these kinds of localities. Now, what happens and why GST plays a major role? After implementation of GST, what happened is these trucks doesn't need to stay in this checkpost for a long time. Initially, there was sales tax, customs tax, like that, multiple tax are there. Now, most of things are pretty much easy. More than 10-15 minutes, no truck needs to stay in any of these state borders. They keep on moving on the roads. This literally slowed down the rate of HIV transition. Last time when they did one research on randomly picking 50 truck drivers and did one test, in that close to 50 to 60% of truck drivers were affected with STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. So because of GST, I'm not pro Modi or against Modi. Because of that decision, it was pretty much reducing the rate of HIV transmission. Now, let's see how shoppers move across in shopping mall. I don't know whether you have come across it. Most of people have the habit of going for a window shopping or going to the shopping malls, going to different places. So we did one work on that. So for a Malaysian, a Singapore-based company. So in a Singapore, there's a shopping mall where normally before this Geo and all this thing come, we were very much dependent on the public Wi-Fi's, especially in shopping malls. If you go there, you can connect to the Wi-Fi. So whenever you go and connect to the Wi-Fi, ultimately your MAC ID is stored there. So next time when you just visit the shopping mall, ultimately your registry is done there without your own knowledge. So based out on that, we were looking like how is people movement. So all these points are different shops inside a shopping mall. So if someone is coming from outside, the thickness of line means the volume of people who moves from one place to another is high. So majority of people comes to the fresh products. There is a reason for it. Whenever your homes are surrounded near to a shopping mall, rather than going to the normal shops, you prefer to go to the shopping mall groceries. Most of groceries will be in shopping mall in the front itself. So rather than going and buying it from different shops, you directly enter into this grocery section and you can get everything in one shot and save your time a lot. That's the reason majority of people will come to fresh products directly. So someone after coming to fresh products, next to second highest is meats and fish and poultry. That is where most people go second higher. Likewise, if we go one by one, they can see the people movement across this entire shopping mall. But there is one very interesting factor. After reaching to one shop, it's called BWS. After reaching to this shop, they decide, okay, my shopping is done. I'm going back. Now, when we were thinking like, what is that factor? What is this attrition reason? What is happening with this shop? We were able to correlate something. The nearby shop for BWS nuts and snacks. So BWS is nothing but beers and wine shop. So whenever someone comes for a shopping, they keep buying the drinks at the last. So rather than going directly and buying that and keeping the bottles in the hand, roaming all around the mall, they decide that will be the last shopping list. So after finishing all the shopping, they'll come to BWS and take a decision of buying drinks, and they decide, okay, my shopping is over, and they go out. Wait a second. You can see here a very simple chart is showing the people movement, and it's telling a story. Now I can understand where intensity of people are coming, and I can reshuffle the shops pretty much easily. This is where data helps us to take decision. Next, third one, we were trying to find out who are the most important characters in Game of Thrones. I know that this is one of the famous series which everyone will be aware of in Netflix. So we were looking like how can we understand the characters in Game of Thrones and understand, okay, who are the most prominent characters. This have meaning in different ways. I'll show you. So we did a network analysis onto it, and we plotted every single character and their importance as a network like this. Now, what you can see is the size of bubble represents the importance of that character. You can see the most important characters are the big bubbles, Tyrion and Jon, then Arya, and like what to say, varies. So what happens is I can even go and all single node is nothing but the sub characters, small characters which are there in this entire series. So let's see, if I am taking John or Tyrion, who are the people who are connected very closely, influential with them? You can see these are the people who are connected with the Tyrion. Now, for every single people, I can see who are their influencers very much. I can even go and set a threshold. I'll remove not important characters. Pretty much, I'll move away from them, and I'll come to the core centric characters of this entire Game of Thrones series. You can see all the sub characters are move away. I got the most important characters. So this use case can be used in different areas: COVID, contact tracing, finding fraud, finding anti means in the area of my favorite area is like anti-terrorism. So that is area where we can find a lot of people who are the culprits, who can be the most influential person in the network, how to eliminate them. All these things you can do using data science. Next, using till now, whatever you have seen is completely built by our tool, our entire platform called Neuron AI. And we worked out on a very simple logic what Google search tells about India. So when you go to Google and type why is Tamil Nadu so, or why is Kerala so, like that, if you type this phrase, ultimately Google gives a couple of suggestions. In that, what is the first suggestion? That's a common thing which most people search. Based on that, we plotted a graph like this. You can see here, if I'm asking why is Tamil Nadu so against Hindi, why is Kerala so God's own country, why is what to say Andhra Pradesh splitting, why is Telangana created, why is Mumbai the richest state, Maharashtra richest state, why is Madhya Pradesh the poorest? You can see in real time Google itself is giving an idea about what every state in entire India looks like. So here also we have not used some very sophisticated tool. It's a basic idea of converting a data into insights. This is one very interesting insight. I'll take another 10 more minutes to wrap up the session. So before that, this is a sales data of a restaurant which is having 4 units. 4 units, unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. Okay. From December to February, unit 1 and unit 2, the sales are very low. That's why it's red and orangish color. But March, April, May, June seems to perform well. Unit 4 significantly performs very well on all other days. Unit 3. Unit 4 is always a poor player, not much. But one very interesting factor what we found was like Unit 3 on every Wednesdays, you can see the sales is dipping. And same day, Unit 4 only on Wednesdays, there is slight improvement is seen. So when we just investigated what happened to it, on every Wednesdays, the person who sits on this counter is taking half a day and going. So what happens is people who come to this counter directly move to the unit 4 counter, which is nearby. So actually unit 4 is not performing well. It is actually capturing the same audience which is coming to here. That's the reason that only on that day, the sales is pretty good. Here also data tells a story. Now, in different ways, we saw how data is telling a story. Does really our birthdays make a big sense on our marks? Yes. This is the birth calendar of 1 year in US. The darker the cell is, the number of births are higher. You can see on January, New Year time, there is births are very less. Okay. And there is, you can see on 13th of every month, births are very less because it's superstition. People believe no one should get birth on 13th of the month because that's a superstition. It's not an auspicious day. But they are very happy to have kids on Valentine's Day. That's why on February 14th, Valentine's Day, the number of births are very high. And no one wants their kids to be born on April Fool's Day, so births are less. On Independence Day, births are less. And on St. Patrick's Day, it's a very auspicious day, the births are higher. Thanksgiving holidays during November and Christmas time, it's like births are totally no. So what we can see is rather than a birth calendar, we can see a holiday calendar. So there is a theory behind this. In US, 60% of births are C-section births. So whenever a doctor faces, or when the birth delivery date is exactly overlaying on the holidays, doctor take a decision to move 1 day or 2 days ahead. So that's the reason what you can see in this data, like it's showing. If US is this much superstitious, how is India? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, you can see the births are very much higher. All these dates are cook-up dates, because when people cook up numbers, they cook up round numbers. That's the reason on 5th, 10th, 15, 20, 25, the births are higher. There's darker stripes you can see. Exactly after July, the births are very less, because this is the time when they go and put them into pre-KGs. Most of parents, what they do is they cook up the birth dates and they put the kids as early as possible into the schools for getting the pre-KG admissions. Now, does it affect their marks? Yes, the same data of whatever students as birth date is, their marks are also taken into consideration. You can see that people who are born on 5th, 10th, 15th, 20, 25, they tend to score lesser than the one who are born on other days. People who are born on August, September, October, November tends to perform much better than the previous people. The reason is pretty simple. When they cook up the cook up the numbers of birthday dates of the students and they put them into pre-KG, they are putting their not much grown kid into a range of students who are already well built. That is the one who was born in August, September, October, etc. Just to get just to not waste that year, they directly put it. That's a reason you can see that age difference and their maturity difference really plays a bigger role in marks. So if you take Google's 99.9% of Gmail spams are captured by AI. Netflix use AI for recommendation of movies. One movie we watch, ultimately most of the movie which it recommends will be likable for you. These days, when you do any kind of chats on any websites, ultimately chatbots are very intelligently, context sensitively, they reply to us. Identification of diseases, AI plays a big role. Uber uses AI for routing optimization, etc. Now, when you have a data, now you need to know who is the audience you're going to determine the story. What is the role of the person? What is the name of the person? Then start creating a template like the person of this role is in a situation and faces this problem. By taking this action, he can drive the impact. So John, the marketing head, must create a region-wise report and does not know the ROI. By prioritizing the region, he can maximize ROI. That means whenever you have a data analytical problem, you need to ask these questions and filling the blanks these things. Ultimately, you will get a problem statement. Once your problem is defined, your answer is also defined. Like this. You can see Adam, the purchase head of leading European breweries. Situation: had planned that purchase commodities from several vendors. Discounts are low, number of weekly orders are high. Problem: but he doesn't know which plant and commodities were the problem. Every plant denied it. Action: by consolidating the vendor, reducing order frequency, they can increase the discount and reduce the logistic price. Likewise, you have to frame the questions and answer, which will really help you to take a decision. Now, again, by emphasizing data is our hero, in God we trust, all other must be data. So data science is not about machine learning and deep learning, it's about business outcomes. Business outcomes are more important than MLDL and NLP. So by this free, I'm ending my talk.